Welcome to the deep dive. We are jumping straight into the source material you shared, focusing on, well, that number that often feels like it holds so much sway, your credit score.
It really does, doesn't it? For so many people, it seems like this kind of opaque, mysterious thing.
Yeah.
And if your score isn't where you want it to be, thinking about fixing it, it can feel, well, pretty daunting. Like moving a mountain, you know?
Totally. And our mission here with this deep dive is to take this source material you sent, really unpack it, and show you that improving your credit score, while maybe not super fast, is definitely possible.
Right, because it's based on actual data, things you can influence.
Exactly. We're pulling out the key insights and the actionable steps from your source to help you get a handle on this for 2025.
Yeah, the source lays out some really crucial areas, like different pieces of the puzzle that make up that score.
And how you can actually affect them.
Right. We've kind of organized them to focus on the stuff that moves the needle the most and the practical things you can actually do.
Okay, so let's get into it. What does your source highlight as the sort of the real giants shaping your score? The factors that carry the most weight?
Okay, so the source is really clear on this. Number one, by a long shot, is how you pay your bills, your payment history.
Payment history, got it.
It apparently makes up about 35% of your score. That's the figure the source gives.
Whoa, 35%, that's huge.
Yeah.
So the source implies that even like one slip up, a single missed payment can really hurt.
Yeah, seriously, damage it.
Right.
According to the material, it's like stumbling right at the start of a race.
Okay.
And that's why the most fundamental advice from the source, you see it again and again, is just pay everything on time, every bill, every time.
It seems basic, but crucial.
Totally. And if you are struggling, the source actually suggests reaching out to your lenders before you miss that payment.
Oh, that's interesting. Proactive.
Yeah, they might have, hardship programs or maybe some kind of payment plan that could help tide you over.
So payment history is the undisputed heavyweight champ, as they say.
Yeah.
What's next up in terms of impact, according to the source?
Coming in a close second is something the source calls credit utilization.
Credit utilization.
Now think of it like this. How much of the credit you have available are you actually using?
Right.
So if you've got, say, $10,000 in credit limits across all your cards, and your balances add up to $8,000.
Then your utilization is 80%.
Exactly. And the source really hammers home that using too much of that available credit is bad news for your score.
Maxing out cards is a big no-no then.
Definitely. Lenders see it as higher risk. It kind of suggests you might be stretched too thin, maybe relying too much on borrowing.
Makes sense.
So the source recommends keeping your overall utilization below 30%, ideally even lower.
Below 30. Okay.
Paying down those balances as quickly as you can is the clear takeaway here. The lower that ratio goes, like if you can get it under 10%, that tends to have a really positive effect.
Okay, so those are the two titans, payment history and credit utilization. Huge factors. But the source also mentions some things you need to do even before really tackling those, right? Like some groundwork.
Yeah, exactly. It's about knowing your starting point. The source really emphasizes checking your credit report. It even gives the specific site, annualcreditreport.com.
Where you can get them for free.
Right. The source's point is you absolutely have to look at what's on there. How else will you know what's helping or hurting?
Crucial first step, definitely.
And tied right into that, the source highlights fixing errors. It says it's totally free to dispute things, and it's absolutely worth doing.
Because mistakes happen.
Oh, yeah. Incorrect late payments listed, maybe wrong balances, sometimes even accounts that aren't yours at all.
And those errors, the source says, can cost you points unnecessarily.
Exactly. So the advice is dispute inaccuracies. Do it with both the credit bureau and the company that reported the info.
A bit of legwork, but important.
It ensures you're being scored on your history, not a mistake. The source also mentions something interesting about 2025, potentially.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
It suggests that some newer scoring models might start looking at things beyond just traditional credit lines.
Like what?
Things like rent and utility payments.
Oh, wow. That could be a potential game changer, like the source hints. Because usually, paying your rent perfectly doesn't help your credit score.
Right, even though it's often your biggest bill.
So if newer models include that, it could really benefit people who are great with those payments, but maybe have less traditional credit history.
Could be. It's definitely a specific point from the source pointing towards possible future shifts. Worth keeping an eye on. Okay, so moving beyond just checking things and the big factors, the source also gets into strategies for actively building and managing credit over time.
Right. It makes the point that you don't need to wipe out all your debt instantly, which is good news.
Yeah, it stresses that consistent, steady progress is what really matters.
Yeah.
And that newer scoring models, like those potentially in 2025, continue to reward that kind of reliable payment behavior.
So setting realistic goals is key.
Definitely. Focus on making those payments consistently. The source does suggest maybe focusing on high-interest debts first, the whole debt avalanche idea.
Right. Tackle the most expensive debt.
But always try to pay more than the minimum if you possibly can.
Because paying more than the minimum helps chip away at the principal faster, saves you interest.
Another tactic the source brings up, especially if you're rebuilding credit or maybe just starting out, is using a secured credit card.
Ah, yes. Secured cards.
Yeah.
How does the source explain those working again?
Basically, you put down a cash deposit up front, and that deposit usually becomes your credit limit.
So your own money secures the line of credit for the lender. Less risk for them.
Exactly. The source describes it as a tool, really, a way to demonstrate responsible credit behavior when you might not qualify for a regular unsecured card.
And the tip is just to use it responsibly.
Yep. Use it like any other card you want to build credit with. Make small purchases, pay the bill on time, every time, and keep the balance low relative to the limit. It helps build that positive payment history.
Okay, and what about leveraging relationships? The source mentioned something about becoming an authorized user.
Right. This is where someone, maybe a family member or friend, who has a credit card with a good history adds you to their account.
So you get a card linked to their account.
You might, but the key thing the source points out is that their positive activity on that account, like on-time payments and low utilization, can then show up on your credit report too.
Oh, interesting. So it can potentially give your score a boost.
Potentially, yes. The source notes you don't necessarily even have to use the card yourself.
But there's a catch, I bet.
Well, yeah. The big tip from the source is make absolutely sure the primary account holder manages that account well.
Because if they mess up,
If they miss payments or run up a huge balance, that negative information could potentially hurt your credit too. So choose wisely, as the source implies. It's relying on someone else's good habits.
okay. And finally, the source does acknowledge that, sometimes this all feels like a lot, especially if you're dealing with quite a bit of debt.
It absolutely can feel overwhelming, and in those situations, the source suggests looking into credit counseling.
So getting some professional help.
Yeah, if you're feeling lost, a reputable nonprofit credit counseling agency can help you figure out a budget, maybe negotiate with creditors on your behalf.
They might even help set up something like a debt management plan.
Exactly. A formal plan to consolidate your payments. The source basically says it's okay to seek guidance. They can provide structure and expertise.
So if we pull back and look at the big picture from your source, the most fundamental truth about improving credit seems to be patience.
Patience and consistency. Yeah. There's no single magic bullet or, instant fix presented in this material.
It's not about a quick hack.
Not at all. It's the cumulative effect, day after day, month after month, of making those smart financial habits routine. That's what builds a better score over time.
So the final message, really summarizing it all, is pay bills on time, consistently. Work to lower your debt balances to keep that utilization low. Be mindful, deliberate about opening new accounts. Don't just apply for everything.
Right. And keep checking your report regularly to track progress and catch any errors. Those are the core actions.
All right, that wraps up our deep dive into the source material you provided on understanding and hopefully improving your credit score. We've really tried to unpack the main factors and the practical steps it highlights.
Yeah, moving from those big hitters like payment history and utilization through the essential groundwork like checking reports and fixing errors.
And onto those longer-term strategies like secured cards or being an authorized user.
And the main takeaway from your source really seems to be that moving towards a better score isn't some overnight miracle. It's about those smart, consistent financial moves over the long haul.
It's about actively influencing the data points that those those scoring models use.
Exactly. Taking these deliberate steps, the ones your source emphasizes, is how you can work towards that better school and, ultimately more financial flexibility.
Greater freedom, yeah.
So, as you think about everything we've discussed from this source, here's maybe a final thought to consider. Which one specific piece of information, or maybe one suggested action, felt the most, perhaps surprising, or maybe the most challenging for you personally?
That's a good question.
And then think about how really focusing on just that one area consistently over the next few months, how might that start to genuinely shift things in your financial picture?